corruption, and the judiciary, which is accused as being the bottleneck in the fight against corruption. Of course, the judiciary always fights back and says, come on, we are dealing with what is before us. And everybody else is like, yeah, but we take these matters before them. And then who has been jailed? Give me one.
That has been convicted and
That has been
sentenced.
and jailed over corruption. And of course, we always say sometimes it's unfair to just heap the blame on the judiciary and not looking at the successes in the judiciary. And let's focus on the successes. One of them is this committee. And just from hearing from the convener, Advocate Paula Atukunda, on what the committee does, bringing together all the parties and saying, let's all work together towards enhancing this. And then hearing from one of the members, the Honorable Zipporah Agishana, who's a principal magistrate in the anti-corruption court, then you can say, okay, there's actually, people actually work on these things. But they're long, like you said, Honorable Agishana. These are cases that were filed over 10 years ago. Even when the EACC comes in, they're giving us the success rate, they tell us, this is a matter that has taken 11 years in court. It has taken 10 years in court. Yes. Others are still going on it, 12, 13 years. A matter that was taken to court last year, don't be in a hurry. Why should it take this long? I'm sure the processes notwithstanding,
yes.
What else makes these cases take so long?
By the way, I think we need to state that a lot of these matters, when I say they were brought, it's not that they were brought in 2010. Maybe the crimes happened 10 years ago.
Right.
What does that mean? Witnesses, memory attrition. Even tracing the witnesses is quite a long walk. Because many of them perhaps were civil servants, they are no longer in service. They were working for institutions, they are no longer in those institutions. So already the process of investigations has taken so long. In the court now, I think possibly one of our oldest matters is a 2010 matter. That one was filed in 2010. But the interesting bit is that hearing effectively started in 2018. I will not be mentioning names, it's still a live matter. Sure. But hearing essentially started in 2018. For the period between when it was filed and when the matter eventually started, we started hearing now as the main case. There were so many applications back and forth, all the way to the High Court, Court of Appeal, testing the system, raising very good issues, legal issues, and saying that I should not be taken through this process, it's unfair, it's this and the other. So there are processes that at times there's nothing to do about it, but that is the whole idea of process. You trust the process, it will get you eventually to where you want to be. Is it as quick as you'd want it for it to be? No, it is not. I think at times I take it as treatment. You see a doctor, he gives you pills, he gives you medicine, he gives you a course of action to follow, but you have to be patient. You have to be patient, and eventually healing will come when it comes. You cannot. There are not processes at times that you can push. Now we have turnaround times that are a bit better because of some of these measures we have taken. And like I said, last year, in the last 1 year, we have finalized 19 matters. These are a good number of these matters are fairly new, are fairly young in the system. When I say new, I don't mean because we have matters of 2017. In fact, these matters that we have finalized, the oldest seemingly is a 2013 matter, but many of them are 2015, 2017, 2020, 2019.
By finalized, are we talking about delivery
of judgment? Yes, delivery of judgment. Okay. Delivery judgment, either acquittal or either convictions. But it is an interesting turnaround time, in my view, because as you can see, in the last 1 year, we have had very fresh matters finalized. 3-year-old. For the judiciary, 3-year-old is plus 3 years is what counts as backlog.
Is there, or has, and how has it been dealt with, if there is, frustration between some of the things that we've seen? Granted that there would be, a state representation whereby the threshold has not been met, and the court, through a judicial officer, will say, come on, guys, you need to be able to bring me something better than this for me to be able to deal with. We've seen some of those cases most recently whereby there's been frustration on the part of the judicial officer to say, we can't continue to operate like this. Would such then be matters arising in this particular committee where we're saying, okay, let's have the understanding that before we walk into the four walls of a courtroom, that everybody is prepared. Because it would seem to me that that would be one of the things that would delay this process, whereby not enough, or rather the threshold for evidence has not been met. Witnesses don't turn up. Whomever is sick today doesn't come tomorrow, and that has direct impact on what will happen with the case. Are such things then broached between the bar and the bench to then make sure that we actually get on with this thing and move faster?
Well, some of those things that maybe you talk about, the way a party conducts its case is really up to them. There's a threshold that is guided by law that needs to be met. And in that position, the judicial officer is an independent arbiter. There's not much they can do because the person who has their case conducts it in the manner that they need to do. However, when it comes to process issues, strictly process issues, where perhaps maybe, you know, you have, let's say, an investigating officer is not able to bond his witnesses or has not been able to bring their witnesses, such issues can be brought to the forum that we have. And we have that conversation because even them, you can castigate someone without understanding where they're coming from. So then they would give you feedback. They would say, listen, I had my witnesses at this point. However, perhaps this witness traveled to Isiolo. I'm not able to get them. I'm not in contact with them. And because of that, then the court would we come to a middle ground and understand what is happening here. Do we need to issue notices on time? Or maybe the witness has, let's say, refused to come and testify. Some of them, when they retire, they leave. They move on, go back to their villages, and they want nothing to do with any of these things. So those are some of the things that help all parties understand what is actually happening with the process and why aren't things moving in that space,
Sometimes coming from the prosecution side, and we recently had a conversation with the Director of Public Prosecutions, Renson Ingonga, and we were questioning the decision to charge and how they arrive at it. Because you will find that the prosecutor is taking 10 accused persons to court over one case, each of them facing 4 or 5 judges. And we even reminded the DPP of Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga saying, look, when you bring 11 people with 11 charges each, how long will it take for us to just take the pleas from this? How long will it take for us to continue with this? Do you have these conversations there? You're like, okay, so at some point this case started with X number of accused persons. You have dropped them. As the case progresses, you're left with 2. So we took so much time.
Well, the decision to charge is an independent decision that lies with the office of the DPP. They have a threshold, they have a policy that guides that decision and why they choose to bring a certain number. You know, anti-corruption cases are very complex. It's difficult to find an anti-corruption case where there's one person, unless you're talking about a bribery claim. That's easy. But you're talking about a system that deals with probably procurement. It comes from there, it goes into accounts. It comes from there, it goes into the contractor. So there's usually a chain of all these people. So the DPP has to meet the threshold under their policy, the evidence tests. They have so many loopholes that they go through before they make that decision. It's a painful one, I guess, and but sometimes it happens. It just has to be that way because of the nature of anti-corruption cases in themselves. It's not usually 1 or 2 people that are involved or are accused of doing something.
But maybe starting from that premise, that's where we go wrong. Because you're like, okay, I've got to take several people to court. And then at some point, the prosecutor will realize that what I thought I had against this accused person is actually not strong enough to sustain this case to what I'm seeking, which is a conviction. So I drop these cases as we go on. Is that not frustrating, Honorable Ishana?
Actually, what I'd want to say is we are all learning from the process. And I can tell you through the National Council for Administration of Justice, some of these conversations have been had. Some of them have actually, like you have rightly stated, have already been subject to judicial pronouncements. How many accused persons is an ideal matter. Of course, we don't state it in absolute terms, but we say perhaps with a number like this looks, and some of them are actually judicial pronouncements from very high up. And so we have seen changes. And if we're also honest, we will also say that there has been there has been improvement. So I believe that we are constantly also learning in the process. And there has been improvement. But as Paula has already stated, there is a process to this. There is a process. It is not a random decision to charge by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. It's a well thought out process. And eventually, of course, we all learn from what we experience, and changes are made as are deemed necessary. So there is improvement.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I also see then, and again, like we saw, I think for the first time, or first time publicly, we did then see the apparent frustration that came from a judicial officer when it was said, again, we cannot continue to have something like this where you take us through the process and then bring us back to as though nothing was done. So it wastes the time of the court, it wastes the time of everybody who's involved in that process. So then I guess we come back to that place where we ask, is there really something that can be done? Like you said, you could have planned all of this, right? And at the end of the day, you can't find a witness. Or somebody is unwell on that day. Or somebody recants
their testimony.
There are changes now.
How does that play in this symbiotic relationship whereby you thought everything was okay, and then we get another frustration and we're like, but I thought we had agreed that these things would not happen.
This is the change that is occurring now. There was a time there were no discussions of plea bargaining in anti-corruption matters. But those are discussions we're having. Some of those matters that we have finalized are plea bargains. That is already a mind shift, I think, for all justice players. It is the understanding that there are more than one ways to skin a cat, if I may put it that way. We have had, for instance, for the first time, an understanding that a witness does not have to be physically present in court to testify. We are exploring solutions driven by technology. Yes, so that we have witnesses seated in the US. There was a time when we thought the witness really has to come to court. I have to touch them, I have to feel them. No, those changes are already occurring in the system. And I think what we need to appreciate is that this has been a long time coming, and it is getting there. So even as much as there might be still issues that we need to work on, I see a constant effort by all players to make improvements. Yes.
We're talking about many players. If we just look at the members of the bar who would be representing their clients in the various cases, those are many.
Yes.
You look at the institutions and the individuals who work for this institution. The DPP has many officers appearing before court.
Yes.
The anti-corruption court itself, the magistrates and the judges, and you keep changing. So today you're here on Rabugeshana, next week you've been transferred to another station. And we're talking about very many people.
Yes.
When you're dealing with people, there'll always be challenges. What are those challenges that you face as a committee when you're saying, all right, I'm convening this committee, I'm the convener of this committee, and we're having these open conversations? Paula, what are the challenges of the committee?
Well, at the start, let me just begin from there. I think the challenges was, first of all, bringing the people together and having open and candid discussions. Because, there's always that suspicion. I don't think you can put a defense counsel and a prosecutor in the same room and there's no tension or suspension on the table. There'll always be that. But trying to foster, a bit of harmony has been something that's ongoing, because some people still suspect the process. Others are not open to have those discussions, and they would rather go through the usual adversarial system where we fight each other, which doesn't help any of us at the end of the day.
The cost of living in Kenya continues to worsen after the prices of goods and services increased by 7.1% in May, the highest levels in 2 years. However, the cost of unemployment to the individuals unemployed is even worse than the inflation itself. Francis Mwangi is among Kenyans suffering from the current economic crisis. He lost his driver's job in March 2020, soon after the COVID-19 pandemic struck.
Ndiko na kontrata ya Kiambu. Tukasukumana na bado nayo corona ikaingia. Nilikaa bila kazi nikingojea, unajua lazima ungojee uko na mahali. Kangojea kitafuta tu barua hapa na hapa na ikaenda hivyo kakosa kazi.
Since then, he has lost count of the number of jobs he has applied for.
Sasa mimi nikajaribu kutafuta, sipati. Mahali nimetafuta ni kengine hapa ya skodi. Napewa 200, naendea mtoto mmoja pale Lijivis. Alafu narudi jioni nalala hapa.
With the current food